I had a paradigm that I would have denied or been embarrassed to admit 15, 16 years ago. And that was this idea that some work is sacred and other work is not sacred, or it's secular.
Today we have Mitch Santala with us on episode 1 of the Hard But Worth It podcast. Welcome, Mitch.
Thank you.
It's good to have you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
We wanted to start with your story because you're going to be the co-host of this podcast.
Yes, I am.
But this is about adventures in leadership. This is about the making of a leader. And you've been on quite a journey over the last 17 years making ISA become a thing and becoming the leader that you are today. And we wanted to start by capturing that story and sharing it with the audience. So I wanted to start by giving you an opportunity to give us a little bit of context of what you were doing 17 years ago.
Yeah.
And why did you get into this whole entrepreneurial thing and get a company started?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. And when we started in 2007, we had a million reasons for it to fail. And probably only one or two reasons maybe for it to succeed. But it was just this sense of, prior to 2007, I had been 15 years in ministry, missions for 10, pastoring for 5. My whole world was around nonprofit, serving in the ministry world. And so business and for-profit was not even on my radar.
Really?
It wasn't. And so when the time came, there was some changes going on within the organization that I was serving at the time. Great leaders, Bill and Jill, running with some really good friends at the time. But there was a shift in my life where I could feel myself, my family, and where I was headed. I could feel a lane changing. If you picture like a highway, and for some parts of our life, we're on a highway where it's a 1-lane road. And we know we're parked behind a slow-moving truck and we're just going to have to drive it out. But this felt like I was opening up to a second and a third lane and can kind of shift. And so with that, I started to entertain some other options. I knew this door was closing. And I had no idea business was on my radar at the time. So I was looking at other lateral moves. I was looking at possibly other churches to go pastor at, which is obviously something you have to explore. Am I just needing to change the pot and tap into some different teams and different environments to grow in different ways? And each one of those opportunities that showed up, I just felt was a lateral move. It wasn't really moving me forward. And of course, there was quite a bit of prayer and process involved. And I just knew there was something out there and I wasn't quite getting the fire on it, you know? And so as my time between resigning from my pastoral role and not knowing what I was going to do next, I started to get more desperate, right? You know, when the paychecks start to run out, or at least the timing of that starts to end, your prayers become better, maybe, I guess. But we were at a spot where I was looking at different jobs, possibly working in real estate, working with a friend in insurance. And again, I just felt that those things weren't the thing. And then I remember one night, my wife had gone shopping with the kids. It was kind of during Christmas season, you know, the October and November season of 2006. And I just got real serious. You know, I was feeling really desperate. I remember getting my journal out and just kind of drawing and writing a few things out in there. And as I got honest with the deepest desire, immediately the thought came out, start a business with your sister. And it was like this thought just dropped in from nowhere. It was probably always there, but I was finally giving it the space. And I was like, start a business with my sister. And immediately I had just this little workflow of business idea. Now, I knew my sister. She had been scheduling in the financial industry for many years, and she was really good at it. But my sister and I, we weren't living in the same city. We had grown apart, you know, over those years of growing up and growing out in our own families. We'd visit each other during the holidays, but we never really saw each other to know the details of our inner lives. I just knew she was really good at this thing she did, scheduling, as an independent contractor. So my idea was to pitch her with this idea of, hey, you're a one-man show or a one-woman show. And if we could take what you do and scale it and multiply it, then instead of a 1-to-5 ratio, one person to 5 clients, maybe we could do 100 to 500. So I had this thought kind of journaling in my book. And when my wife came home, I was all excited to just share. I said, I had this crazy idea. And I thought she would shoot me down on this idea because it really felt like it was coming from left field.
Why? Yeah. Why would she shoot you down?
Yeah. Well, it just wasn't on my radar. It's like 10
so
years.
It's not a normal conversation the two of you.
No, we were thinking, what are we going to do? And she's like, hey, buddy, you might have to start working at Costco here pretty soon because you have to put Cheerios on the table, right? But my wife, she's been the biggest advocate for me in my dreams. But ministry and nonprofit was kind of the lane I was in. So this isn't even on my radar. So when she came home, it was like, hey, I got this idea, thinking I might start a business with my sister. What do you think about that? And I was thinking she might say no, talk some sense into me, but she's like, yeah, do it. She's like, go for it. That sounds exciting. And when I talked to her later about that, she said, when you brought that up, she could feel the fire on it. And I could feel fire on it. There was something about this new idea that just had a lot of life and a sense of, I can go build something. I can go create and innovate. What I didn't know then, that was the entrepreneurial spirit in me that was also acting in all of my previous 15 years in ministry. I mean, the things we did over those years were very entrepreneurial, but in the nonprofit space, we don't really have a label for entrepreneur.
We don't talk that way.
Yeah, we don't. We're a church planter,
Yeah.
or we're a builder. But for here, I was looking to plant a business. So obviously now I have language for that. And so I called my sister up.
So it sounds like there was an interplay between two things to my ears. One is there was a desperateness emerging, like something was ending.
Yes.
I don't know if it was dying particularly, but a season was over. So, and that season had been connected to identity, but also to paycheck.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as that fades, we enter into this, desperate panic, like necessity emerges, right?
Yeah.
And Costco would have been a solution to that problem, sounds like, right? That would have put Cheerios on the table.
Yeah.
But then this other notion that emerges here is this fire, this energy, this excitement. Those two things, what was happening is those two things played together.
Yeah.
The sense of deep excitement about something and also a desperateness about like Cheerios on the table.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I think when you're 33 or 34, which would have been about the age I was at, I think you're kind of ending a stage and entering a new stage of
like development.
Yeah. And it's not that one's less than the other, but you transition from married husband with super little kids to now, more like middle-aged or young middle-aged husband who has littles who you're starting to launch into life. And so responsibility changes.
How many kids did you have at this point?
We had, in 2007, we had our 3 boys, and my little girl was on the way. So we were pregnant, ready to have her in 2008. So
there's some responsibility there for both you and your wife. You're making decisions that matter here. And I've often noticed that there is a season change right around there that many people figure of or experience where it's like, okay, I've done some stuff. I've figured some things out, but now let's go build something.
Yeah. And I felt that going on in me. Like I had some good opportunities in front of me. And they were fallbacks. I mean, clearly if things didn't work out, I would have jumped on one of those because at the end of the day, you take care of your family, you do what you need to do. But there was some time here that we had. I thought that we could run together if my wife was on board, which she was, to maybe pursue a dream. And if that dream was realized, it would fulfill something in both of us that we never knew we always wanted. It's kind of one of those things you didn't even have language for, but it's all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, this could allow us to be more free, more independent. If this works, we can champion other ideas, still give ourselves to other ventures and other movements, but have a little more control and autonomy, which was something that was driving me at the time.
Yeah. So let me roll you forward a little bit here. So you get this idea and you go for it. Your sister says yes,
Well,
and
she said no. That's what I was
oh,
going to get to that point.
okay,
So
okay, yeah,
this
that's
is my
important.
older sister who I love dearly, and we're still partners today. But my first pitch to her was, "Hey, I think I can help. You know, I've got this idea. What do you think?" So she lives in Nevada. I'm here in California, and I said, you're a 1 to 5 show. I think we could build a company 1 to 500 if you partner with me. And she thought about it for probably a day and turned around and said, yeah, that's not going to work. And I think that's probably in part her way of showing me I'm the younger brother, right? It's something older siblings do.
Yeah.
But what's funny is a couple weeks into it, she felt the same stirring. And so she needed her time to attach to this thing.
Sure.
But she called me up and said, hey, you ready to go into business together? And within a month, she had moved her family to Redding, and we started in the garage at her house here in Redding, California, off of Micah Court. So we were the true startup in a garage, no heater in the middle of winter, trying to figure this thing out. And we did.
Wow. So if you roll forward a few years, what kind of challenges did you face as you began to try to learn how to do this thing called business in the for-profit world and lead a team?
Yeah, I think right off the bat, one of the challenges was money, clearly. So you're jumping into this endeavor that isn't paying you anything. And I think one of the first stages you're in startup is this stage called early struggle. And that whole early struggle is simply about trying to find a sustainable, viable customer, someone who's willing to actually pay you. You're trying to get cash. And you only have so much startup money, whether it's in your savings account or in your checking account. But at some point that runs dry. And if you don't replace it with revenue, then that's probably where the graveyard of most startup businesses occurs,
That's right.
And so I had about $30,000 of untapped credit on 3 or 4 credit cards. And so my pitch to my sister was, hey, I've got about 30K and we can let this run for a while and see how far let's just put it all in and see how far we can get. And then if worse goes to worse, you and I dig out, we can both take 15K over time and we can dig out of that. So we kind of had our own startup capital with credit cards that got us. I remember in those days we were shopping at the Walmart in Anderson, which took credit cards because we can buy cheap groceries on credit cards because we literally were doing everything together. It was like whatever it takes. And so I think one of the first challenges was finding some stakeholders, people who would believe in us, because what's funny about starting up is when you need the money, banks aren't willing to loan it.
Not at all.
Right? So we went to a bank saying, hey, if you would just partner with us, we need $100,000. We know $100,000 would get us what we need to get through early struggle into maybe some sort of sustainable market. Nope, call us back when you're 2 years, right? It's the 2-year mark. Well, by the time we turned 2 years, I didn't need a bank anymore. Now they're calling me going, hey, can we give you our money? It's like, well, where were you when I needed you? It's like, what have you done for me lately type of thing. But I think the challenge was trying to stick out the cost and what it took to really get to that first paying customer. And once we had that first paying customer, we knew we could do this again. Once you do it once, you could do it again.
What other challenge did you face in terms of building the team, the human relationships as you try to put this thing together?
Yeah. The team challenges, I think, one of the first ones was facing a cultural stigma that, I don't think it was a big hurdle, but it was a barrier. And that was people from the outside kept saying, you should never mix business and family.
Yeah.
And so there was this thing of, I'm partnering with my sister, and do they know something that I don't know? Even though my sister and I are very connected and we have a deep level of trust, and I would credit our success in a large part to her, of course, both of us partnering, but being able to contribute to each other's strengths, where she brings her strengths, I bring mine, and together we are able to get something done better than if we did it apart. But learning to put those voices out, because what's funny is everyone has an opinion about your business, but when you ask them to come be a part of your business, they're nowhere to be seen. But they love to sit from that front row and give you feedback and judge you in a way. Not everybody, but so many people do. And it's like, I had to shut those voices out and go, no, I think we can do this. And we have. We're 17 years in now. And, I just had a meeting today where my sister and I, we still are deep partners, covenant partners, not just contract partners. And we're in this good, bad, and ugly and beautiful, the whole thing.
One of the things you talked about earlier was this transition from going from this nonprofit world, ministry world, into business. And that feels like an identity switch or a way of seeing yourself at some level. What did you experience in the years that followed, in the 4, 5, 6 years later, as you, I guess, had to figure out what it meant to be an entrepreneur or a businessman, or wear that label?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And now that I'm 50, right, and I can look back to that 35-year-old, I can see that I had a paradigm that I would have denied or been embarrassed to admit 15, 16 years ago. And that was this idea that some work is sacred and other work is not sacred, or it's secular. This idea that there is a type of work that is more important or more special than others. And so think about me coming out of a ministry, nonprofit, charity type of environment to now the for-profit world. My head would have answered the questions that, no, there's no difference. But my heart was really struggling with thinking I had maybe sold out or downgraded or was pursuing something that was less than. Now, today, I know more than anything, it's not the work that determines the value or the sacredness. It's the person behind the work. All things are sacred when they're done by a person who has a vision for the sanctity of whatever that work might be achieving. So whether you're cleaning toilets or preaching from a pulpit or, feeding the homeless, in your city, or building a business with 140 employees and making payroll, every week or every month. I mean, those things are all sacred when the person behind them is able to really step into that from a place of this has meaning.
Yeah. What was your experience of wrestling through that paradigm shift?
Yeah.
How did that occur?
Well, even though I had changed my environment, so many of my relationships hadn't. And so there was this constant living in a place of my communities, which were still in church. They were still in, Youth with a Mission, which was a nonprofit organization. So those relationships don't come over with you. They stay with you, but they're not moving. So the boards I was sitting on, the teams I was still running with were in that stream. And I felt like an outsider, even though they never made me feel like an outsider. So I had to really do some deep work to try to understand where those stories, where that narrative was coming from, because it was in me. And this transition was used to just reveal something that was I was able to confront and accept and acknowledge. And actually, I had this thought. Funny enough, I had this thought early on that I was going to go build my business to then eventually go back in to ministry, and I wouldn't have to worry about raising money or getting paid a low salary and blah, 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 but I can just do it and be in control of it all. And it's almost as if, God had allowed me to believe that to actually nudge me into the place that I was meant to be. Now, today, I look at where I'm at and I know I was made for this.
Yeah.
And the impact I'm having on my employees, the impact I get to have on my clients, the impact I get to have in shaping a business that actually meets a felt need in a way that matters to people. that feels sacred to me.
Yeah.
When I go to bed at night, I feel like I'm fulfilled.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. So, was there a point in the build where you and your sister sort of felt like you'd broken through, or like was there a moment where you're like, I think we're gonna make it?
Yeah. Yeah. There have been a few of those moments. So early on, we talk about that first paying customer, John Hershock, still remember his name. We framed his first check because it was like, we got somebody and he believed in us. So one of the things that we had decided to do that we had no idea, it seemed like if you would look into this, you would think we were brilliant and being very strategic. We weren't.
Hmm.
We were just taking good advice from our attorney. One of the smartest moves I think we made is we hired an attorney early on to help us design the structure of our organization. You could think of, we are a national company. In fact, we're North American company. We serve Canada as well. So we have employees in every geographical region, time zone, across 16 different states.
Hmm.
And so early on, we knew that was going to be our business model. For us to do what we needed to do, we were going to be decentralized and make this type of business model work. The thought, though, was we could do this with an independent contracting workforce. So we would do this with 1099s. And we had reasons why that would work and why we wanted it to work is it costs a lot less money to have an independent contractor as an employer. You know, the minute I hire an employee, I'm paying 15 to 16% more just to have them in. And so there was a lot of incentive to do that the other way. But our attorney looked at what we were trying to do and said, listen, you need to do this as W-2 employees. And as a result of that W-2, so we did, it cost us a lot more money up front. But as a result of that decision, we had a large corporate company, Lincoln Financial, who came to us in 2007 saying, hey, we understand that you're a W-2 business model. We're working with an agency over here, but they're independent contracting. And for compliance reasons, we're wanting to shift everything over to a W-2. What do you guys do? Can you support, and I think it was like 30 accounts. Of course, I said, yes, we can, even though I knew we didn't have the
Not
staff
yet,
yet.
but we will.
But we will.
Yeah.
And so we hung up that call, and that was a big breakthrough for us because we went from one to counting in tens, and we had our first big corporate contract. And so from there, we went into 2008, and we were onboarding like crazy, but then we know the market crashed.
Yeah.
And so here came this big wind and then a big fall. And we were questioning everything. I mean, to me, it was like, did we make the right decision? If I knew what I knew now, then would I even started the business? I mean, because the financial industry was ground zero to the 2008 crash. And yet here we were dealing with people jumping ship, people bailing. But even in the midst of that, we just stayed the course. We stayed consistent. And we had Ameriprise approach us at that time. And they asked us if we would be willing to do contracts. And they wanted a lower rate in their pricing structure. Well, at that point, it's like, who wants to give a price cut when you're barely surviving? Like, I don't want to cut rates. But what we were able to design in that mode was our first contract preferred rate pricing. So we've always been month to month because we believe, hey, if you can find better service somewhere, you deserve to find it. And it makes us show up every month to deliver. But if you want a discount that's over time, then we're willing to enter into a contract. So Ameriprise helped us forge our first preferred rate contracts, and they were our first contracted. And as a result, we were able to control our attrition ahead of time because we knew the discounts we were giving, but we were locking them into contracts. So now we knew we had these partners for, months ahead rather than are we going to keep them next month and they're all going to bail on us.
So if you were able to describe a moment, a season, I don't mean a single moment, but a season in this build where you weren't sure it was all going to be worth it, but it was hard.
Yeah.
How would you describe that season or moment or experience?
Yeah. For me, it was the moment that I realized I was exactly where I was supposed to be. So it didn't, for me, it wasn't about a certain quota or reaching a certain milestone when it comes to the business development, even though I believe in goals and we set some big audacious goals and we've hit and met some of those milestones and they're awesome to celebrate. For me, it was the moment that I realized and accepted that this is what I was made for. And I think until then, I was acting more foreign, more detached from my role as a CEO and an entrepreneur because
Why? Why were you? What kept you detached from it?
because I kept thinking that this was for something else. So this was less than other types of work, this dualistic mindset that I didn't even know was in me. But I was struggling with this sense that this type of business, and then think about the financial industry. If there is a ranking system,
It's at the bottom.
it could be at the bottom if you have a poor mindset.
I mean, there's language in the Bible about how you can't, rich people can't go to heaven.
Yeah,
basically,
just all these lies, all these myths, but you don't realize you're partnering with that. So for me, until I finally caught up to the truth, which was, no, this isn't for that, but that was for this. My training ground.
The training ground of nonprofit world and church land and ministry.
Exactly.
That actually was, that was the breakthrough. That, which was supposedly better, the sacred thing, was actually for this, the quote unquote secular thing.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
That prepared me for this. Yeah.
What did that do inside of your sense of self or identity or place in the world?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just become Neo on Matrix in that moment at the end. Because you really, everything slows down and you're like, I am in my mode. And you realize that the words you're speaking are shaping worlds. And the people you're bringing into your life are helping you execute on something that actually matters. And I think in those moments when you're fully centered in that place, you're moving things more than just building a business, you know? And I felt that.
When that shifted internally, because that's an internal thing first, right? External pressures are causing that grist of internal change. Could you see a difference in how you were showing up as a CEO before and after?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think you need to ask my team, some of those who were closest with me, but I would say that what I have noticed that has followed me living from that place rather than for it. So for me, the language would be up until that awareness or me accepting that alignment, I was living for something I never knew I always had. And so the moment the lights came on, I wasn't living for it anymore. I was doing all the same things, but I was living from that place. And it's just changes everything.
How would you describe that place?
I think that place for me was living for this place meant it was going to make me something.
Oh, it's going to prove something.
It was, so I was going to have to attain these things to be somebody that I thought I wasn't. Maybe security, some financial connections, certain milestones that you're trying to achieve. It's all for this type of, you're trying to arrive or build this reputation, or you're controlling things. There's fear. There's some anxieties attached to that you don't necessarily know or acknowledge because they're kind of living in the shadows. When you get to the other side of that, I think what you realize is how good living in peace and moving from that place feels. It's like if you've ever been really sick, we just came out of COVID, so we all probably had it, right? There's that moment where you just feel terrible. What's interesting is you didn't recognize how healthy you were until the day you felt better. And so I don't know that I realized my situation until I got to the other side. I was like, oh, wow, this actually feels really good. I'm where I need to be. I don't have to struggle. I don't have to strive. I do work hard, but my reasons for working hard are motivated from different places. So my scorecard changed. Yeah.
I was recruited to work for a company many years ago, and a national company, and I was traveling around doing training and kind of meeting the people. And I was sitting in Colorado Springs, and spent a week there with this guy. He's very successful in this particular company, and so I was gotten to know him, and we did some stuff. And then one day he walks me into his office, and he says, "I want to show you something." And I'm like, "Cool, that's what I'm here for." And he opens up his P&L over the last 5 years or something like that. He'd been in this location for a number of years, and he showed me year one, decent sales, no margin. Year two, a little better sales, no margin, not making any money, not making quotas, not making bonuses, just struggle. Year three, same thing.
Yeah.
Year four, bam, massive difference.
Huh.
I said, "How'd that happen?" Like, I want to know how that happened, right? And he goes, "I decided it was time to succeed."
There you go.
I was like, "What?" He
Yeah.
goes, "Yeah, I was tired of struggling." And he didn't go into a lot of detail about that, but you could see, he brought me in there to show me that moment, to say, "I just figured it out. I'm meant to be here,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna compete with that in mind."
Right. Yeah.
And he said, "I just won." I was like, "Holy smoke."
Yeah.
It sounds like a similar sort of transition, where that shift that goes, "I'm meant for this, and I don't have to prove it. I don't have
Yeah.
to fight it. I don't have to, I'm just going to go do it."
Yeah, I think that's part of our journey in life.
Hmm.
And I think vocation, when you think of the original word vocation, we use it today as kind of a common word for work. You know, what do
Yeah.
you do? Hey,
Yeah.
we're at a little party and I bump into you. Hey, so what do you do? That's the vocation question. And that's how we understand it today. But when we follow that word back to its root and its origin, the word vocation is rooted out of the word calling in Latin. And so there was this sense, in fact, if you go back to Martin Luther and you read some of the Reformation, some of the work that he did that isn't written about, because he did a lot of work in that time, was that he brought a sense of sanctity back to the everyday worker. That what you do is a calling if the way you do it is from a place of feeling set apart and sacred. And so all of a sudden, the guy showing up in the farm and in the fields was equally doing sacred work as the person going into the church or whatever. And so I think we're all on a journey to discover that place. And for some reason, the world has its narratives for us that might be trying to distract us or lead us to places that we know they're not authentic to us. They're someone else's place. And so we're hopefully narrowing down those options over time, sometimes through pain and struggle. Usually those are the best
Yeah.
lessons that teach us to go, wait a second, that isn't good for me.
That hurts. So about how long ago would you say that moment, or that season of transition, of stepping into the CEO role from a place of belonging there?
Yeah.
How many years ago would you say that was?
Yeah, it was probably about 5 years in
Okay.
to the business.
Yeah.
And I was left, probably I was a little more naive, thicker headed, hard headed.
Sure.
You know, like there were moments, my wife, my family, where I think I had indicators coming my way, but I just blow through them, just ignore them. And then, but there's that moment where I think you can't ignore it anymore. And so it's about 5 years in of feeling like I finally hit this mode of accepting, and not accepting as a trade-off. I was actually accepting as it felt like an upgrade. Oh, I am doing something I'm really good at. And I like this. I enjoy this, and I'm good at it. I mean, there's something where you start seeing those things align where you're like, I could do this. I could wake up tomorrow and do this again.
There's a period of time in our lives where they say we pick a hill to die on.
Yeah.
Or no. What they say is we pick a hill that we're willing to die on. And that hill is often something that resonates in this way.
Yeah.
This is my work. That's a hill I'm willing to die on. That often takes place in that season of life. That late 30s seems to be where those things start to coalesce.
Sure.
I see that over
Yeah.
and over.
And I think a business is a great way to make the world a better place. to sit as an entrepreneur, a visionary, and to imagine a world, a preferred future of something that doesn't exist yet is one thing. And there's joy in that. But then to cast a vision that calls people to see themselves in it. So all of a sudden you're rallying the customers, you're rallying the employees, you're rallying the people in. There's just a lot of fulfillment in that. There's a lot of meaning in that. You're helping people join into a vision that's bigger than you, and you're helping you're using them to help you. Together you're collaborating to build something that would never exist if it wasn't an idea in your head first. And I just think that's part of how we're designed. We're designed to go into that place, and business is a great way to leverage benefiting people and seeing them called into their potential and watching them be empowered and championed and even rise above you and do things better than you by creating environments and cultures where they're free to create and they're free to dream within a context. And eventually they design things that were never even on your mind.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa.
Beyond you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if you were to think about the arc of the last 17 years of starting ISA, moving into this role of CEO in a profound way, and you were to sort of succinctly say to us, what made it hard and what made it worth it?
That's the question, isn't it? What made it hard and what made it worth it? I think what made it hard was the fact that this work had to matter to me. And so the hard was in the process of finding meaning in a type of work that can easily be written off as trivial, admin, outsourced, not necessary work. I mean, we schedule appointments for salesmen and women who are actually doing the deal. They're making the big tickets. We're just the help, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was finding a story in there that had enough meaning for me to give my life to. And I feel like I did that. That's why it's worth it.
Yeah.
Because, I'm not going to be written in a book somewhere that our company changed the world necessarily, like some of those big stories are.
Sure.
But man, I got 100 plus employees where every time their check goes into their bank, I know they're a beneficiary of some type of providence of their life, and I get to celebrate that.
When you started this, there was the desperateness of getting Cheerios on the table.
Yeah.
Right. That's the have to. It sounds to me like you found your get to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good language. Yeah. I get to.
Yeah. Hey, Mitch, thanks for being here today and being our first guest. And in our next episode, you're going to join me in the co-host seat as we start to tell the story of other leaders. And if you guys out there in the audience land want to follow along, best way to do that is going to be to subscribe. We're going to be on all the different podcast platforms, or you can see this in video over on YouTube. Just search at Icon Coaching and you'll find us there. You can also find out more about what Icon Coaching is all about at ikoncoaching.com. And if you want to get connected to Mitch and his company at ISA, tell us the best way to do that, Mitch.
Yeah, best way is ISA Solutions, ESASolutions.com.
So thanks for joining us for episode 1. Subscribe, like, do all that stuff, comment, tell us the stories you want to hear more about. And we will be here for episode 2 just around the corner.